Nancy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think this topic is so important. When we were first scheduling the interview, we were talking about creating a business and a life with intention behind it. And you have this whole program called the 4R Method. And I mean, it's your program. So we haven't talked about this on the show, and I think it could be so beneficial. So can you basically explain what the 4 method is, those 4 pillars? And then once you give an overview, I really want to dive into each of the pillars and ask some questions around those.
So the 4R method is, the first R is recognize. So what we're doing, I'll back up. The whole purpose of the 4 R's is to create a pathway for you to be at peace, productive, passionate about what you're doing, purposeful. So I'm really teaching people how to dial in to be the best version of themselves, but also peak perform. So the first R is recognize. First and foremost, power lies in awareness. We can't change anything we're not aware of. We can't develop something if we're not aware. So the first one is recognize. The second one is release. And in the foundation of my program is a very mindful base because it's rooted in research and neuroscience, and it's backed by all types of doctors and all kinds, again, research. So when we talk about releasing, we're saying developing habits that serve. So mindfulness teaches us to be purposeful, living aware in the present moment with curiosity and non-judgment. So in order to recognize, you have to foster being present, and then to release, you have to be greeting yourself with curiosity and non-judgment, because most of us, we're defensive of our habits. We're defensive of how we show up. And so you have to get out of that defense mode and be very curious on, why do I keep doing this? Why am I have resistance to this? So that's the releasement process to rewire the brain. So we know we get better and stronger at the things we practice. And this is definitely backed by research that we can build the gray matter of our brain and quiet the amygdala, the fight, flight, freeze. It's in the back of our brain. They've got all kinds of data that shows people practicing mindfulness and quieting the amygdala. And in developing this prefrontal cortex, we're the rational parts of the brain. So we're actually teaching people to rewire their brain to make choice to support the life they want to live. So my mission and my slogan is create a life you design, not one of default, going through the motions of life. So recognize, release, rewire to radiate your best self, to be that person you want to be the leader in your community, the brilliant individual that you were born to be. And what the beautiful thing about sole proprietor, people that own their own businesses and everything, is they already are in doing something that they're passionate about. They're not working for the man, they are working for themselves. So how do we even capitalize that they've got one leg up when they're a solopreneur and they're in this environment of creating a life they design, not one of default?
Nancy, this is exactly why we wanted to have you on the show, because you're right. So the audience that we talk to, they're people that want to create a business that supports their life and their desires outside of the business, rather than get rich quick, money is everything type of people. But the sad reality is that people set out to do this, but then they get into the hamster wheel and they have to go through the motions because they have to make a living. And sometimes they forget that joy and that passion that put them into solopreneurship in the first place, which is why I really wanted to walk through your program today. So let's dive into some of the specifics. So recognize is the first step. How can solopreneurs cultivate that self-awareness to improve their business and their lives?
Well, I think the key point, we'll kind of throw some little data out here. We're in a time in our lives that the stress and overwhelm is really creating undue amount of stress. people are overwhelmed. People are, this is, making chronic ailments and depression. So, and those numbers are so high. So what we need to recognize is the world around us has kind of bred this feeling, whether we just kind of get sucked into the flow. And our mental patterns are the things that we can control. We can't control our external environment, but we can control how we show up. So beginning with, our minds wander 50% of the time. That's how we're wired. So if you start learning how to live in the present moment, the foundational piece of my program of being present, learning, and there's tools and there's techniques, and learning how to be present in this moment, there's research and data that says that mindfulness will improve that focus and concentration, help you improve that mind wandering. And if you even take back your power on like 2%, what would that do for your productivity? What would that do? But that's the key here is to that recognized piece. We're all in a stress-filled environment, and we have, stimuli constantly coming at us. So how do we recognize that we're in that stress, that hamster wheel, in that grind it out, babe, let's go, and take that pause and say, am I present? Am I living right here, right now? Or is my mind somewhere else? Yesterday's conversation, future bills I've got to pay. Who knows? Am I really present right here, right now? And learning mindfully to be aware, to show up in your life and really dial into the present moment. That's how I began by saying, what is the one thing that they could start doing? And that's being present.
That's such good advice. It's funny because I was with some mom friends the other day, and I don't know if we ever finished our conversation. We were either distracted by the kids or our phones or taking a call or this or that. I, one, don't think we finished the conversation, and two, couldn't tell you what the conversation was about in the first place.
No, you weren't. And this is not anybody's fault. This is just what happens. We're not present. We're so busy putting out fires. And it takes choice to take a breath and be present. Even though there's lots of stimuli, how can I get laser focused? I don't know if you've ever seen any of those videos. They'll show like quarterbacks and stuff that practice all this mindfulness. They literally do not hear the crowd. They only are focused right on the play. And it's amazing. They built this ability to tune out the rest of the world. And that's basically what, we're trying to dial in to be really present. I think one thing I hear from my clients that's really neat is like, I felt like I was finally fully present at the dinner table. Like I'd be sitting there thinking about all the things I have to do when I get up from here. Or, what about that conversation I had with Bill, and did it go right? And missed the whole dinner conversation, missed the whole interaction of the kids, the wife. And
what about the phone thing, checking the phone while you're eating people.
Yeah, while you're eating dinner, and it's like, I was like, I remember this one guy saying that to me. He goes, I was actually present. He goes, I almost wanted to cry because I felt like, wow, this is what this feels like. Or actually, I'm not, I'm fully present. Whatever that is will wait. It's there. It's not going anywhere. You hold the power. So make choice and say, I think I'm going to leave that phone in the chair in the den and come in here to dinner and be fully present.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So you recognize what's going on and everything. So then from the recognize stage, you go to the release phase. Can you kind of explain some of the principles of like mindful living in this release phase and how they can help with some of these unproductive habits?
Yeah. So, release is a very interesting one. Because first you have to be aware of what it is and what in the heck do I want to change? And the whole goal is to live that life you want to design. So you have to look at yourself. There's nothing broken here. I want to improve self. I want to be a better version of myself. So mindful acceptance teaches us we don't have to like what is. We don't have to agree with what is. But we have to mindfully navigate that it is what it is and effectively choose. And that's also called the art of detachment. So detachment is not being aloof. It's being present, but being the observer. And you get to write your life movie. So what I tell everybody is imagine yourself sitting in the movie seats and you're watching the big screen and you're sitting there watching the person, the actors, and you're watching this, whether it's a comedy, whether it's a horror flick, whatever. And you're like, oh my God, oh my God, did you just do that? And all of a sudden now that's the role I want you to play in your head. No, Nancy, don't do that. Right? So you're taking yourself out of being enmeshed in the experience and you becoming the observer. So I want you to be the person sitting in the movie seats, watching your movie play out. So that's how you get to the release statement, stage of this program, is that we start developing what is it that I need to release. I had a guy who said, I have a great life. I just have bad habits in place. I get home, I pour the scotch, and the next thing you know, I pour the second scotch, and then I'm so foggy in the morning. There's no getting up and going to the gym. There's no this, and so it sounds very simple. Don't drink the scotch. No, it's not that, and that's not going to solve the problem. It'll move to cookies. It'll move to something else. It's like, how do we get to the root of why you're pouring that scotch? What are you doing when you're reaching for the bag of cookies? But you can't go from here to right here because we're so critical. We judge the amount of salt of our food, the temperature of our coffee. We judge everything. So you have to get out of that and say, what is it I'm looking to do and improve, and how do I navigate? And first I have to accept what is.
Well,
so can I ask a question though?
Sure.
So you're saying that you really want to narrow down your attention to the things that are important to the changes you want to make? Is that a simple way to say it? Okay.
Correct. Right. And you start noticing, and then you'll start noticing, how much time you spend being unconscious and just reaching for the scotch because it's a habit. Or, so mindfulness teaches us to notice those things more. So you can choose to release.
So here's my question, because I feel like you kind of have to get to a place of self-compassion or something to culturally say. Because if you're watching the movie of your life and seeing everything that you're doing wrong, I mean, people can be really hard on themselves. So do you have any recommendations? Because I feel like to properly detach and move forward with the other steps, you need to have some self-love there too. So what recommendations do you have for that?
Beautiful awareness, Carly, because that is the crust. I think the biggest hurdle I have to overcome is the lack that we lack self-compassion. We have such a strong inner critic, and we are driven by perfectionism and all these kind of things. So self-compassion is one of the hardest things to develop, but one of the most important. And there's a series, and typically when I'm working one-on-one, I'm teaching them techniques that help build this self-compassion in. And one that I can share briefly here is it's called the RAIN technique. RAIN, like the rain that falls down out of the sky, RAIN. And this is a reflective. So again, mindfulness isn't meditation. Yes, there is mindful meditation. It is very effective, very helpful. That's how we build that mindful muscle and be able to stop and pause. And I teach my clients, 2-minute, 5-minute. We're not talking sitting for 30 minutes and chanting Om. We're talking about, what's this quick hit to change that rational part of my brain. So, but recognize this RAIN technique, the R, recognize you're simply sitting in a reflective state of being. You're giving yourself a moment to reflect, which is a mindful moment because you're getting out of your stress response and into the relaxation or rest and digest response. So recognize what's going on inside of me. Observe the anxious thoughts. Observe the inner criticism. Observe the emotions that are underneath those thoughts, right? Get in touch with that. Allow what's happening by just breathing and letting yourself be, that mindful acceptance I was talking about. Don't go in there trying to change things. Go in there with love and compassion. What am I feeling? Your intention is not to try to fix or change anything right away. And it's about dropping, if I'm being judgmental and critical on myself, I want to switch into compassion and kindness for myself. That's so much more effective than berating myself. So the second is allowing. Then you roll into the third step, investigate. What is most difficult about this? Bring that kind and interested attention to what is being experienced. And ask yourself, what's the worst part that I'm telling myself? And is this a fact or is this a perception, right? We're greater than the worst thing we've ever done, by the way. It's like, get out of that mindset that, I'll never be good at this, or this, this is just how I am. Now, you're greeting yourself with this, how can I respond? What do you need? And what spawned this in me? Ask some really questions like, is this a trigger? Is this a habit? Is this a pattern in my life? And are these feelings familiar, something I've experienced earlier in my life? Because you'll find that it is. Now, you're trying not to analyze at the investigative state. You're simply being the observer. So we keep coming back to that curiosity, non-judgment, watching the movie thing. Instead of thinking about what's going on, keep bringing your attention to how it feels in my mind, in my body, being the observer. And then finally, rain for self-compassion is to nurture. So calling upon those wiser and compassionate parts of your being. You might place your hand on your heart center and speak lovingly, especially when I have my people that are anxious. I said, can you do this? I know you feel like a goofball, but guess what? It's going to bring a feeling. It's going to cultivate. It's you responding to yourself. And experiment with how befriending yourself, your inner world, it's how you would respond to a dear friend. And that's how you want to nurture yourself. So that's the one technique that I lead with a lot, because you're trying to cultivate everything I need lies within me. We're a culture that goes outside of ourselves, and we really want to dial it in. It's an inside job. So you're trying to get in tune with those most vulnerable parts of yourself and know that you are seen, heard, and valued by you. So and you're offering that.
Question on this. This is the rewire phase now? We're rewire.
Yes.
And so as we doing that, that sounds almost like the first step in rewiring, right? That's not the whole thing. Because
it's the releasing going into the rewire, because you're releasing that inner criticism. So it's kind of neat. Each phase, it's like they each kind of overlap each other. And you will even find that simple exercise will now bring awareness to something you never knew about yourself. So sometimes, I greet people with what they want, not what I think they need, but at the ultimate, because I've been doing it for 18 years, I know what they need to get to where they want to go. So the same kind of thing. You can't go in there with the agenda that I'm going to fix this, and this is like, it's you go in there, wow. So that's what I'm holding on to. That's the resistance, right? And the self-compassion. So you're exactly right. That rain technique just starts putting your toe in the water. Self-compassion is a very foundational and important piece in becoming that peak performer, that whatever that goal is that you want to achieve.
So now you have self-compassion. Now you can actually start the rewiring of everything, correct? Which is what takes us to that phase. So what can solopreneurs, or what techniques can solopreneurs use to establish those new, would you call them like neural pathways? Is that the right thing to say?
Yeah, that is. So there's several. And you, again, remember, it's like anything. You don't become a scratch golfer after just taking a couple of lessons, right? You got to build mindful muscle. So you start, really taking the time to build a regular practice, to practice and reinforce these new skill set, whether it's taking time in the morning, in the evening, during the pauses during the day. And people are going to, I get it all the time. I barely have time to do what I got to do. Well, we have to unpack that programming, because guess what? You will become much more efficient, much more productive, much more peace-filled if you do something like this. And so you start building these new neural pathways by doing techniques like the rain. There's also one I call stop. It's you literally teaching people to S is stop, take a breath, couple of breaths, observe what's going on. Don't just get on board with the unconscious train. Be present. What's going on? If I want to change the way I show up with my partner, my colleagues, my people that I sell to, whatever it is, right? Clients, kids, whatever. Be the observer. Stop, take that breath, observe, and purposely proceed. You start doing something like that, we call it a mindful pause. You get off the crazy train of just being, running around with your chicken with your head cut off, right? And yes, there is enough time. It's amazing. I had a guy who, just said he was a COO of a IT company. And he was just so resistant about practicing. I don't have time, Dan. I really just, I want you to, basically, I want you to fix me. And I was like, just throw me a bone, man. Just do a couple, take 5 minutes. But it was amazing. One time when he was trying to crank out a work order and he had to put all the intricacies of everything this that they needed to do cybersecurity wise and everything. It's quite lengthy. And he was just brain fogged, fried. And he heard my voice and he stopped and he took some breaths and I'd given him some breathing techniques and he cleared his mind. I think he's told me he timed it 8 minutes and then went back to that task. He finished that task in record-breaking time. That's why we have this programming that we don't have enough time, but we have to practice. We have to practice making time. And that's that, word that's overused, the self-care piece. It's like that word, self-care. Yes, you go and get your nails done. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the time you spend with self, breathing, drop into parasympathetic, the rest and digest function of the body. Give yourself just a few minutes and it'll really change how you address the rapid fire in your life, because we all have it. The challenges, the volatility, the uncertainty, the ambiguity, all the stuff that faces solopreneurs. You can't get away from it. It's a challenge. Pain is inevitable. That's your challenge. Suffering is optional. It's your resistance that creates the suffering.
Yeah. So well said. It's funny because we've been tackling this home renovation landscaping project for, I don't know, forever now. But we're finally doing some landscaping stuff. And my husband and I made the decision to not bring our phones into our rooms anymore after we put our kids down for the night. And we've come up with solutions. We've been trying to brainstorm for months. It seems like it's like, okay, let's talk about this. And I'm like, the only thing we did different was put our phones away. Even if they were next to us, I don't think we would have had that same conversation. And it is mind-blowing how quickly we've solved these problems.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? It's such, what I teach isn't rocket science. It's just that I'm teaching you to cultivate a sense of calm. We've never been taught that. We think you work harder, that's success. You work, whether, and by the way, I mean, like, we didn't even talk, how about the person who's a solopreneur and they've got an aging parent and they've got to take care of them and they got to go over and caregive them. I mean, they're giving from all ends, and there's no badge for burning yourself out on both ends. You're not, so this is where I like that person. I really say it's valuable for you to please take a pause before you go over to take care of that parent or do something for them, because you just had a stress-filled day and you might vomit on that person, right? And then you got remorse because I feel so bad for the way I showed up. Or you show up for the kids' game and you're all jacked up and now you just, this is how, you're really teaching people to dial in, to be present, and they can attract better opportunities, better solutions. They get collaborative with their team, just like you were talking, like almost, you just solved world crises in the bedroom. Trauma doesn't mean you're a World War II vet. Yes, they experienced immense trauma, but trauma is running all the time and we're just stuffing it down. And then you got physicality, you got issues, you got mental, emotional breakdowns. So, in our world, our problems are our problems. Don't mitigate that don't make, I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I'm doing this. If it bothers you, it makes you uncomfortable, then you got to turn and look at it. You got to actually face it. Don't try to power through it or conquer it. Just turn to it. And if it truly doesn't have a deep rooted legs, it's going to vanish right before your eyes. You're going to see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, it takes practice, takes that repetition, but you just got to stick with it.
Exactly.
So that leads us into that fourth stage, radiate, which that word, I don't know, when you say radiate, I just see sunshine. Maybe that's just me. But I feel like, how can solopreneurs keep that inner peace, keep that mindfulness going, that practice, so that they see that success in their business, they see that success in their personal life?
I think, just like we have to be disciplined on things in our business, it's the discipline of taking time for self. What is that self-reflective that I just described? Is it sitting in the morning? I have one client, he has a gratitude practice. I'm just bringing the mindfulness piece into something he already established, and as a business owner, he established years ago. Whatever that looks like, you're setting the intention for the day and what can I do to support myself. And we're not talking large amounts of time. We're just talking intent. What is my intention, and dialing into where my attention is at any given moment. Is it on my intentions or is it somewhere else? And so you're checking in with yourself regularly throughout the day. And if, setting an alarm, if you need to set an alarm to build a habit, we hear this all the time, but I do believe that there's a moment in the morning, if you're sipping your coffee or doing something, there's a moment to really set that intention to, be the best version. And also feed yourself. So if you have a favorite podcast person, you have a favorite things that will uplift and fill you, you need to pepper in, because we have negative stimuli coming to us all the time. And if you're listening to talk radio and in the news or something, you're just getting plummeted. But, what is that? Music. Music is a powerful thing. It's vibratory. And so put on some of your favorite, you're feeling a little rough, put on your favorite tunes. So I would say that it's just building these disciplined, and I hate that word because everybody goes, when you say discipline. But it is practice makes perfect. It literally is, but we want to teach people that it's not some big and, huge thing.
And if nothing else, practice makes progress.
Exactly. I like that. Yeah.
That's my husband's favorite quote, because we have little ones and he's like, I don't want them to think they're perfect right now, but if they practice, they will have progress.
Yeah, my wife uses the same thing. She's a child therapist.
I love that.
Because the quote I used to throw back at my parents, because they used to say that to practice makes perfect. I'd be like, well, if practice makes perfect and nobody's perfect, why practice? And I'd heard that somewhere. I did not come up with that quote, but I heard it somewhere, and that was kind of my thing to throw it back.
I know. And I have to stay away from perfect because half of my clientele struggle with perfectionism.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. But I just think that's so important to get that. I mean, and I like how you said the morning, like to just set that intention. Joe, I don't know if you noticed this with this morning, but I asked Joe to set a 6 a.m. meeting my time. And it was because I love that morning time. It's my me time. Nobody else is up. I can be productive, or I could not be productive. I can just, and sometimes it's so easy to sleep through that morning time when you're like, but I just love it. And I don't want to skip through that. So Joe, that's actually why I asked for that 6 a.m. status this morning. Cause I was like, it'll get me up and then I'll have that morning. But it's hard to
it was 8 a.m. for me and I was late.
I was like, what?
I was doing the other thing. I was enjoying the morning coffee very mindfully.
There you go. See,
I really like that coffee is involved or can be involved in this.
Exactly.
And the reason I'm going to be that's transparent. That's mine. That I get up at 5:30, and that 5:30 to 6 is my coffee saver time. And I talk to God. So it's my time to be there, to be present, to set an intention for the day, how I want to show up. I want to be a positive influence. I want to make, I want to see the positive. I want to be authentic. This is where I'd have this nice little dialogue to just kick off but I'm savoring that cup of coffee.
As one should. Nancy, I want to know, because I feel like we've covered so much. So just as kind of like some parting words, do you have like one piece of advice you'd want to give solopreneurs to maintain that balance between their work and their personal well-being?
Yeah, I would just say the one parting advice is you are a priority. And to, set those intentions to honor yourself. Take time for self. Schedule those regular breaks. Set the I hate the word boundary. Again, this is where people get all, wadded up. But you have to make yourself a priority. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success, right? We've heard that quote. So you have to cultivate a feeling of, I don't mean like joy, like, oh, because this isn't real. We can't always have that. But we sure can have a content, a acceptance, a willingness, encourage. And that is a sweet spot of productivity. And you can cultivate that with something like a mindful practice.
Well, those are great words if I ever heard them. Nancy, you help so many people find success in finding that balance and everything. So this is something we ask all of our guests. What is your favorite quote about success?
Yeah, I would say that, I think it's Albert Schweitzer. It's the success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you're doing, you will be successful.
That's mine too.
Is it really? Because I try to tell everybody, because, it goes right in with create a life by design, not a default. When people go, they come to me, they want to make a living doing what they want to do. Well, first and foremost, don't go in with that attitude. Go in with, I love what I'm doing. And because I do, that's going to radiate, that's going to, ripple effect. And then I will create success in my life. But I'm coming at it from a place of just genuine passion and purpose and happiness. That's how you breed success.
Perfect. Love it.
Awesome.
Joe, I feel like that needs to be our H1 on our website, that quote. We'd steal it, but still. Well, this has been so wonderful and so helpful. Where can people learn more about you or your program if they want to do some research after this?
Sure. My website is awakenwithlight.com. I also have a free ebook over there that gives you some tools and techniques to navigate stress and overwhelm. So feel free to go over there and get that. I'm active on LinkedIn, Nancy Gentle Boudrie, just like this screen shows. And as well as Facebook. Facebook, it would be Awaken with Light Inc., which is my business name, awakening the light within us. And then Instagram as well. I think that's Nancy Gentle Boudrie. I'm not as active there, but LinkedIn is my main place that I love to hang out. And then I do have that Facebook business page.
Perfect. We will have all of those links in our show notes. But we can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. We've really enjoyed this time.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And gosh, I just love what you guys do.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, and listeners, if you love what we do,
you know what to do.
You know what to do. We love those 5-star reviews, those comments, those subscribes. Please do that. We love putting on this show for you. And with that, we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.